The cold came in quietly. It was early March, the kind of damp Irish cold that crept through the walls and settled into the bones. Bridget had walked home through it days before. Nothing unusual, nothing worth remembering. But by the time the fever took hold, that walk would become the beginning of everything. At first it was just weakness. She stayed in bed just that little bit longer than usual. Her husband, Michael, noticed she wasn't rising with the same energy, wasn't speaking as sharply or as warmly as usual. Her skin burned, her breath came shallow, and her eyes, when she opened them, seemed slow to focus. "She's taken a chill," someone said. That should have been the end of it, but the fever climbed. By the third day, Bridget was no longer herself, or so it seemed to those around her. She spoke in fragments. Sometimes she didn't answer at all. When she did, the voice was faint, as though coming from a distance. Once, when Michael asked her something simple, she stared at him just for that little bit too long before replying. Too long. It unsettled him. He began to watch her more closely. The way she held herself, the way she looked at him, the way she didn't look at him. "She's not right," he said. Others came to see her, family, neighbors. They stood at the foot of the bed whispering. Some crossed themselves. One woman glanced towards the doorway as if expecting something unseen to be standing there. It didn't take too long before someone said it aloud. "The fairies pass here." Their house sat near a path people didn't like to speak about freely. A place where the air felt wrong, where animals shied away, where stories had always lingered just beneath the surface. Michael didn't argue with them. By the end of the week, the idea had settled into the room like a second presence. Bridget lay in bed, drifting in and out of fevered sleep. Around her, voices spoke about her as though she were already gone. "She's been taken. They leave something behind. A changeling." Michael sat beside her, staring. He asked her questions. "Are you my wife?" She turned her head slowly towards him, her lips parted. The answer came weak and delayed, too delayed, and he didn't believe her. The tests began quietly. A drink was forced into her lips, bitter and herbal. She coughed, choked, tried to turn away, but hands held her steadily in place. Someone said it would force the truth out. Someone else said a real wife would drink it willingly. "Say who you are," Michael demanded. "I am," she began, but the words faltered. The room tightened. It wasn't the answer they all wanted. The fire became central. It burned constantly now, its heat filling the small space. At some point, no one later agreed exactly when, Michael decided it would reveal her. They lifted her from the bed. She cried out then, clearer than before, fear cutting through the fog of her illness. But to those watching, it wasn't fear, it was resistance. They brought her close to the flames. "Tell me the truth," Michael said. Her skin flushed from the heat, twisted weakly, trying to pull away. I am your wife," she said. But her voice shook. Her body trembled. It wasn't convincing enough. But the next day, the house no longer felt like a place of care. More people came, more voices, each one adding certainty, not doubt. They spoke of others, stories passed down, warnings repeated, of those taken and replaced, of the need to act quickly before it was too late. Bridget lay quietly among them, fading in and out of consciousness. She was weaker now. Her answers were shorter. Sometimes she didn't answer at all. And every silence became proof. The final day came without ceremony. It was evening. The light outside had dimmed, and inside the fire burned stronger than ever, stoked with a new rage. Michael stood over her. "This is not my wife," he said coldly. No one stopped him. They pulled her from her bed again. She struggled, but there was little strength left in her. Her voice, when she tried to speak, was barely more than a whisper. He held her down. Someone else held her arms. The smell of paraffin filled the room. There was a moment, brief, fragile, where nothing had happened yet, where someone could have spoken, where someone could have stepped forward and stopped the madness that was to come. Afterwards, the house fell quiet. Too quiet. They buried her quickly, not far from the home, in a shallow grave. Michael did not weep. Michael didn't weep because Michael did not believe she was dead. He was waiting. He told others she would return, that the real Bridget would come back, freed now, riding out from wherever she had been taken. Days passed, and Michael kept watching. But no one came, and certainly not Bridget. And in the end, what remained was just the story of a woman who died. It was the slow, creeping certainty that had replaced her long before the fire ever touched her. The moment when illness became suspicion, suspicion became belief, and belief became something no one inside the house could escape. This sounds like a fantastical story, but this is truth. This is the story of Bridget Cleary and her husband Michael. Bridget was born on the 19th of February 1869 and died cruelly at the hands of her husband Michael on the 15th of March 1895 at 26 years old. It's a cruel tale of how lack of understanding of illness and superstition led to the belief that the fairy folk had taken Bridget and replaced her with something that wasn't quite right. A very real fear that echoes into modern times. Have you ever had the moment where you're staring out the window in a world of your own and someone turns around and says, "You were away with the fairies"? That's because that saying originates from the belief that when you weren't yourself, it's because you were taken by the fairies and replaced with something not altogether human. Michael didn't go to the authorities. because he genuinely believed that his wife was due to return and that she had been abducted by a fairy. He was arrested and given 20 years in prison for the murder of his wife. Neighbours and family were also given shorter prison sentences for their part in the murder. But it doesn't change the fact that Bridget was actually murdered for superstition, a belief that fairies had returned from the path, abducted his wife, and replaced her with a changeling. The fairies that they speak of was an Irish folk tale, and quite a sinister one at that. Now, our perception of fairies is somewhat twisted. Blame Disney for that. Undersized women in torn miniskirts with wings on their back that are somewhat tricksy. Everyone knows Tinkerbell. But what of the real fairies? The ones from folktales? The reason I've included an Irish folktale in this is because it bears remarkable similarities to British and Welsh fairy folktales. In Welsh, they're called Tylwyth Teg, and we followed a very similar process for removing, via heat, the fairy changeling from the body. We also believed that cold could also remove the fairy, which resulted in a lot of Welsh families leaving some very sick babies out in the cold overnight. And as you can imagine, not a lot of them survived. Do I believe that there are miniature humans flying around on butterfly wings, nicking teeth and moving socks and things like this? No, of course not. And I don't think that people back in the day believed that that was the case. I believe that back in the day, these beliefs were something darker. In old folk tales, fairies didn't just move things around and play tricks on people. They actively removed people. People vanished, and when they came back, they were different. They'd come back changed somehow, either in personality or in physicality, or with some new intolerances to foods. Their personalities had changed in some way. They mentioned notice of time slips, where they can't remember where they were. Now, calling them fairies, that makes me wonder, were these something more? Something that they didn't know how to explain? Because these stories bear a remarkable resemblance to alien abductions, people vanishing, reappearing, and yet somewhat traumatized from their experiences. One of the most notable cases of this would be Travis Walton. Travis disappeared in front of a group of friends after seeing a glowing vehicle in the middle of a forest clearing. His friends, all seeing the same thing, ran for it, and I don't blame them. A bolt of lightning from this vehicle had hit Travis in the chest and thrown him against a tree. They all ran back into their car and drove like madmen until they realized that Travis wasn't actually with them, at which point they turned round, drove back to the clearing, but couldn't find any trace of the vehicle and couldn't find any trace of Travis. Immediately the friends were arrested, they were all interrogated, and their story remained exactly the same. One friend was even interrogated for murder because they'd had an argument and a punch-up several days before. But then Travis returned, in a place miles away. Travis disappeared on the 5th of November 1975, but then reappeared on the 10th of November 1975. Disheveled, he rang his brother on a payphone at a gas station. Baffled by where he was, completely confused and disorientated, immediately the media jumped on the story. But Travis was different. He couldn't work out what was going on. He didn't understand where he'd been. Eventually, he spoke to a psychiatrist and under hypnotherapy broke down, telling fantastical tales of creatures that strapped him to a table and began operating on him. Travis was suffering the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, but couldn't explain why. Could Travis have made this up? Quite possible. But he had nothing to gain from this, since for the last 50 years, skeptics have sought to ruin his life, trying to discredit everything that Travis has said. And yet he still sticks to his guns and swears blind that this is what happened. You can listen to Travis Walton talk about this experience on the Joe Rogan Experience, episode number 1597. Years later, researchers arrived back at the site where Travis had been hit by the lightning bolt and the clearing where the vehicle had been. They found trees in the clearing that had distensions on them, thicknesses in the tree where low levels of radiation had caused the wood to expand and bulge, and the radiation still remained. Are these the fairies of the olden days return? I'll leave that to you to decide. Well, that's all from us here at Dark Entertainment. We hope that you've enjoyed the episode. And if you have, please remember to hit the subscribe button, the bell icon for all notifications. But remember to give it a big thumbs up, as this will really help the channel grow. If you wish to contact me, you can drop a comment down below. I aim to answer all of them. Or you can find me on X or on Facebook. But if you've got a story that you would like me to tell, a suggestion for the channel, or a location for me to investigate, feel free to drop me an email at dark_entertainment@outlook.com. And remember, stay dark, stay creepy, and always laugh. Ta-ta!